are new indications that the White House plan to extricate the president from the Jeffrey Epstein controversy might be starting to crack. The Justice Department told a federal judge that the grand jury transcripts it's asking to unseal include testimony from just 2 witnesses. And both of those witnesses were law enforcement officials. No direct testimony from the victims themselves, no client list as it's been called. And the revelations about this grand jury and what it's going to potentially come because a federal judge in New York was asking the government to supply more specific details before he makes a ruling on whether or not this information should even be disclosed. If it is released, will testimony from 2 law enforcement officials be enough to satisfy the president's base? That remains to be seen tonight, but it comes as the House Speaker Mike Johnson says the president is doing everything he can to ensure maximum transparency.
I'm pushing aggressively for the full release of everything that is possible. And by the way, so is the president. He has said the same thing. We're using every mechanism within our power to do that and to do it as quickly as possible.
Of course, for the speaker himself, a reminder that he essentially shut down the House rather than take a vote that would force the release of the Epstein files. And the speaker says the president is aggressively pushing himself, urging every mechanism within his power when it comes to these documents. But other than those grand jury materials, the Justice Department does have the power to release nearly everything else with redactions to protect the victims who are in those documents. The president, for his half, after mishearing a question today that was initially about the Russia investigation, keep in mind, instead answered about Jeffrey Epstein and repeated his stance.
Well, I want everything to be shown, as long as it's fair and reasonable. I think it will be shown and it should be shown. And I think he feels that way, and I think Pam feels that way. But it's got to be, it's got to be stuff that really doesn't hurt people unfairly, because you have so many people involved. And if they can do that in a fair way, I think it's great. I think it's really great. The whole thing is a scam. It's a scam set up by the Democrats, and they love talking about it.
Democrats were definitely talking about it today. The Democrats on the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee invoked a rarely used law to request that the Justice Department provide them with the Epstein-related files by mid-August.
Our request covers all documents, files, evidence, and other materials in possession of the DOJ, the FBI, related to the case of United States versus Jeffrey Epstein.
And tonight, my colleague Paula Reed is reporting via a source familiar with the thinking inside the Justice Department. The department is not expected to comply with that demand that you heard there from Senator Schumer. That could tee up a legal clash between Senate Democrats and the Trump administration, which would prolong even further the story that the president very clearly wants to go away. My White House insiders are here tonight, along with CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig, also joining us back. And Alex Eisenstadt, when you look at this, and in terms of how the White House is handling this, what they're looking for, I mean, what have you heard from officials, especially if this grand jury testimony is only going to include potentially just hearing from 2 law enforcement officials?
Yeah, it's pretty clear the White House is going to have to do more to quell the uproar. And you have members of Congress, senators, who are going to be back at home in August hearing from constituents. They're very amped up about this. The Republican base is very amped up about this. You have majorities in polling show majorities of Trump voters want more information released. And so you're going to see pressure on the White House for members of Congress to release more information. And it seems likely, the White House is going to have to do more to release information. The question is what is enough?
Yeah, and when it comes to what is enough, I mean, the White House does not seem to yet have an answer to that question. I mean, I did think it was notable to hear how the president answered that today. It was about this allegation about burn bags and the Russia investigation documents, and instead it turned into his stance on the release of these files.
The Washington Post had a poll this week that showed more than 80% of MAGA Republicans want all the files released. And so when you hear the speaker say everything, or you hear the president say, I think everything should get out, they're not really talking about everything. If they were talking about everything, they wouldn't have put out the memo weeks ago in which Pam Bondi said we have hundreds of gigabytes of data, we have physical evidence, and we're not releasing any of it. I mean, that was the...
Any of it?
Any of it, yeah, that was the FBI statement. It's closed, there's no more perpetrators, there's no more information, and now they've focused everybody onto this grand jury conversation. Grand jury conversation is, an infinitesimal fraction, and it's also the part that is hardest to get out because you need a judge's permission to put out the grand jury transcript. They have these documents in their possession right now, and they've made no move to put them out.
Yeah, and Ellie, speaking of this being up to a judge here, I mean, the Justice Department memo says that the two witnesses in this proceeding are the same FBI agent from the Epstein grand jury proceedings and a detective with the NYPD who is a task force officer with the FBI's Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force. That was during the Maxwell grand jury proceedings. I think some people might look at that and say, I'm not sure if that's enough. But my other question is, does a judge see the MAGA backlash and say, well, that's going to make me release this information, or are they hesitant to do so?
A judge should not care at all about MAGA backlash or any media or political backlash. And Caitlin, to the question that has been raised, how could there be only two witnesses here? I think normal people are asking that exact question. The answer is because this is how we feds, I'm a former fed, indict cases. The grand jury rules are very generous. They say that we don't have to actually call any witnesses, any firsthand witnesses or victims. Instead, what we do in the vast majority of cases is what it looks like they did here. You call your FBI agent who's been working the case. He or she gives a broad summary to the grand jury, and you walk out of there with an indictment. And I think to further manage expectations, if we do see these transcripts, unclear what a judge is going to do, I think people are going to think they're complete duds. First of all, I expect, having done this myself, they're just going to track the indictments, maybe put a little more meat on the bones, but that's generally how you do it. The other thing is, we are almost certainly not going to learn from these transcripts about any other wrongdoers. I went back and looked at the indictments today. Neither of them, the Maxwell or the Epstein indictment, mentions any co-conspirator specifically by name or even generically co-conspirator 1, 2, 3. So I think if these come out, and it's not clear they will, they're going to be very disappointing and not very enlightening.
Well, and with the information that the Deputy Attorney General ostensibly got during his 9 to 10 hours with Ghislaine Maxwell last week, I mean, what options does the DOJ have for that information?
So that's also a great question. I think we will learn the substance of what Ghislaine Maxwell told Todd Blanche. Now, ordinarily, by the way, you would never publicize that as a prosecutor. You just sat down with a very sensitive witness. However, I think it's clear Todd Blanche went in there for a reason. I'm sure he had a good sense of what she was going to say beforehand. Usually, again, normally, you would have an FBI agent there taking notes who would write up what we call a 302, which is a summary. It could be that DOJ releases that 302. It could be DOJ releases some sort of statement. It could be someday Ghislaine Maxwell is actually subpoenaed and immunized and has to testify. But I don't doubt, I think we absolutely will learn at least Todd Blanche's account of what was said in that room someday.
Yeah, I mean, and Alex, the Senate Democrats are now getting involved in this. Obviously, Mike Johnson was saying he's done everything. I think Thomas Massie would disagree with that since they got sent home early, basically for summer recess to avoid taking a vote on it. But Senate Democrats are now getting involved in this. It's this arcane 1928 rule, I believe, that came about, and because of corruption in the administration back then. But I think the question is, even if this is just a legal fight, I mean, it's going to keep it in the headlines.
Yeah, and that's the idea, right? For the first time, it feels like Democrats have Trump a little bit on defense here, right?
On probably the least expected front ever.
Yeah, and Trump is struggling to get out of this, and Democrats have had a hard time finding a message effectively this year to use against the White House. And finally, they have traction on something, in part because they're getting help from people on the other side of the aisle who are unhappy with the White House. But you're right, Democrats want to keep this going, and they want to diminish enthusiasm that Republicans have heading into the midterm elections. So there's really nothing to lose for them by putting this out there.
Yeah, we heard from the Majority Leader John Thune saying this is going to result in a protracted legal fight. I mean, and we have pushed back on the Democrats who've come on the show to say, well, you could have done this under President Biden, and there was not a clamoring for this back then.
Yeah, they're really enjoying this moment, and I don't think you can look at what Schumer did today and not say it's political. It's clearly what it is. But they are tapping into a real anger in the country. And again, it's going to come down to, do the American people trust the leaders of the Justice Department to tell them what's happening? They've already said, the leaders of the Justice Department have already said, there's nothing here to see. You don't need to see anything more. No one else did anything wrong. There's no blackmail. There was nothing there. The American people are clearly saying that was not enough. We want to see more. And so now you're going to have a process in which they're going to put out more information, but the American people are still going to not believe that what's been put out is there. And so Democrats will be able to continue to make hay about it. And, if they regain control of the House in a couple of years, they're going to have new levers to actually put some of this information out.
All right, with us now, the anchor of The Source and CNN's chief White House correspondent, Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, what are officials in the White House saying tonight about the president's handling of questions surrounding Epstein and Maxwell?
Well, I think one thing that White House officials have been saying is this story is going to go away. We're going to stop talking about it. This is not important and it doesn't matter. Something the president himself has said privately to Republicans who've been pushing for this, questioning why they are focusing on this now. But then when you look at what the president does say publicly, John, I mean, obviously he has kept this story very much alive by yesterday revealing that and confirming that Virginia Giuffre was someone who worked at Mar-a-Lago and was recruited away by Jeffrey Epstein, that she worked in the spa when he was talking about the falling out that they had. And in another moment in the Roosevelt Room earlier today, a reporter was asking a question about the Russia investigation and some allegations there. The president couldn't quite hear the question, John, but then he answered about Jeffrey Epstein and about the files being released, saying that if things are fair, that they can be allowed to come out. And so you're dealing with that inside the White House in terms of what the president is saying publicly, what he is saying privately, but also this intense pressure that is not just coming from Democrats on Capitol Hill, but also from Republicans who have been hearing about this while they've been home for recess after they were sent home early by the House Speaker Mike Johnson to avoid that vote on releasing the Epstein documents. And so that has kind of been this crossroads where the White House is at in terms of a lot of bewilderment, honestly, from White House officials that I've spoken to, that this is a month-long story now, that it has gone on for so many weeks. And yesterday, though, you could kind of see the president's irritation when he got back to the White House. And I asked him about that comment that he made about Jeffrey Epstein stealing people away from his spa at Mar-a-Lago. I asked, did that not raise alarm bells if he was taking young women who were working at your spa, including teenagers like Virginia Giuffre? She was just a teenager at the time, she said. And the president basically said, be quiet, and that he turned to answer a different question there, John, even though he had just been taking a question. It's just kind of a snapshot into how he is handling this and dealing with this, though the White House seems to recognize this isn't dying down as much or as quickly as they had hoped.
Yeah, he didn't seem to like that question. Is it clear why the president has refused to rule out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
He doesn't like to put himself in a box. I think if you asked him if he's going to pardon pretty much anyone, he did this with Diddy as well when his trial was very much still underway. And I think that there is an option here. I mean, there is a reason that the Deputy Attorney General went and met with Ghislaine Maxwell as they were hoping it would kind of quell the outrage they're hearing from his own base. It's not clear what the Justice Department is going to do with the information or what Todd Blanche learned from Ghislaine Maxwell that day. And so I think, what Maxwell's team has made clear, John, is she is seeking a pardon or a reduction in her sentence, and only the president can offer her that. And so I think it is notable, and I've asked people around the president if they agree that he hasn't ruled that out, and they've all said yes, because obviously it is very much still an option for him.
And Ghislaine Maxwell's attorneys seem emboldened by this. Caitlin Collins, thank you very much. We will see you at the top of the next hour for The Source. With us now, Politico White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns, senior writer for Politico magazine, and former federal prosecutor Ankush Khardori, former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, and former editor of the National Enquirer Barry Levine, who has reported on the Epstein saga for years. Barry is also the author of The Spider, Inside the Criminal Web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Dasha, Caitlin, it was interesting, said the White House continues to think this story will go away. Maybe they were hoping it would go away. Then what do they think when they hear the president, White House officials, start disclosing new versions of how he broke up with Jeffrey Epstein years ago?
It's a bit of the hands emoji, John. Like, this is not what the White House wants the president to be doing or talking about, because they also know that behind closed doors, the president is furious about this. He wants this story to stop, and he frankly doesn't care, and he knows that his supporters are upset about this, but this is just not his priority. This isn't something that he's interested in. He's sort of rolling this out in a drip fashion that's frankly extending the news cycle here. They keep trying to do these things that they hope will quell or quench some thirst for the base, but there's no ripping some Band-Aid off that they're doing that can just put a stop to this whole thing. And so I have never seen this White House or the president or Trump himself on a back foot like this with his own base. They seem a little frozen, a little paralyzed, because they just have never been here before, where there's this narrative that they can't seem to change, to turn, to move forward from.
Ankush, what stands out to you? One of the things that the White House has done, the administration, to try to quell some of the uproar about this, has pushed for grand jury testimony. So what stands out to you about this latest DOJ filing urging this New York judge to release this testimony?
Look, I think, excuse me, I think it makes even clearer what was honestly pretty apparent to most lawyers who've had experience in the federal criminal system, which is that this is not likely to produce much new information that materially changes much of anything. It's common for federal prosecutors to charge criminal cases by putting in agents who worked on the case. Their job is to summarize the investigation and to provide the grand jurors with information, to summarize for them the information that supports the allegations in the indictment. Now, what that means is that you are not likely to hear irrelevant information from those agents, nor are you likely to hear them discuss evidence that the government was not intending to introduce at trial. So, or to be particularly addressing defendants or charges that were not at issue. So I think the fact that there are just summary agents who were testifying in those proceedings is not actually that surprising, but it strongly suggests that even if they manage to get the court to approve, one of the judges to approve the release, that it won't change the complexion of what we already know.
Yeah, by definition, is almost a limited request for transparency. It's limited in its very nature. That said, Barry, this is something that you've been, focused on for a long, long time. Yes. Is there anything that could come out of that you think you might find interesting or new?
John, we may get a few little nuggets of information. Again, we know everything that was in the charging documents when they arrested Jeffrey Epstein. We also went through the full trial with Ghislaine Maxwell, where they put out 4 victims and ended in her prosecution and sent her away for 20 years. I don't think we're going to get much, and this isn't what we want. This is not what the victims want. They are being traumatized every single day by hearing these crazy, stories that this woman was stolen from Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago spa. Maxwell, who they all believe is a liar. The government said that she committed perjury. What did she say in her 9 hours of interview? We're getting so many more questions now as this thing goes each day, and it's not going to get solved until we can get a look at full transparency with redactions of victims and third parties and really get to those documents. And why they're, putting us through this, I just don't understand.
Congressman Kinzinger, it's interesting. You heard J.D. Vance and our Open say that the president wants transparency. House Speaker Mike Johnson, talking to Jake Tapper today, was saying, he wants full disclosure. Yet House Speaker Mike Johnson is the one who sent Congress home early, so they didn't take any kind of a vote on requiring the Justice Department to release the information. So how transparent is that?
No, they're not transparent at all. Here's what's drives me crazy is we now as a country have just accepted that these people lie all the time. Mike Johnson will say, yeah, we're trying to be transparent, and we know he sent Congress home early. Interesting, they had time for town halls. They didn't do those, though. But he did that, and we know that's not true. I mean, the reality of it is, John, this is one of the very rare losses, big L's, for the Trump administration in communications. Usually they're pretty good. They're pretty good at obfuscating, at least, getting their base off of this. But the thing is, the Epstein issue to the base, particularly a certain part of the base, this is like a religion for them. I mean, literally, since Epstein was out there, they accuse people of all being pedophiles, all their opponents, all these Democrats, which, by the way, is actually a Russian thing. It's kind of a Russian tactic. And so now Donald Trump has to answer. And honestly, I think had they just put out, their statement and ignored it after that, it would have died down. But instead, right now, they're basically sitting around feeding this, particularly with his big truth socials. And the last thing I want to say is this. Narcissists at least can pretend to have empathy. In this case, I have no clue why Donald Trump cannot just say once that he feels for the victims. It's always about him.
President Trump tonight appearing to again call for the release of more Epstein files. But there's a big catch.
I want everything to be shown. As long as it's fair and reasonable, I think it will be shown and it should be shown.
as long as it's fair and reasonable. And see, that's where everything becomes subjective. Because what is fair and reasonable? Who is making the assumptions on that? Because Trump has said that a lot of what's in the Epstein files should never see the light of day.
It's a hoax that's been built up way beyond proportion.
This Jeffrey Epstein hoax.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats. I call it the Epstein hoax.
So anything that Trump thinks is a hoax that's in the files doesn't get to come out. Only the things seemed fair and reasonable to his team. Well, that's pretty significant. And maybe that is why tonight, the one thing his Justice Department is asking a court to release is the Epstein grand jury transcripts. And it sounds kind of grand, right? Well, at this hour, though, we're learning what is in those transcripts. And that may provide very little information because we now know that the transcripts include the testimony from only two witnesses, an FBI agent and an NYPD detective. Now, that's good and that's important, but that's the tip of the iceberg. And Trump knows that these transcripts are a slice of the story, not the whole story. Is that why, for weeks, Team Trump has been selling these files as the end-all and be-all? You know, you get this and you've got it all and we can move on. I mean, on July 17th, Trump said, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I've asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony. Subject to court approval, this scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. Bondi responded the same day online saying, President Trump, we're ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. 2 days later, Trump says, I've asked the Justice Department to release all grand jury testimony with respect to Jeffrey Epstein. But again, the testimony that would come out in this that could be released does not include Epstein's victims. It doesn't include anyone close to Epstein. It doesn't include his former associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's serving 20 years after being convicted of helping Epstein groom and sexually abuse underage girls. It's a tiny fraction of the mountain of evidence that the DOJ and the FBI have that exist. According to their memo earlier this month, these searches uncovered a significant amount of material, including more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence. 300 gigabytes. According to the administration, that's tens and thousands of videos of Epstein. So if this judge agrees to release the grand jury transcripts, it most likely will not put an end to the quote-unquote abundant public interest that the DOJ says is now surrounding the case. Interest that has exploded, especially after CNN learned that Bondi told Trump in May that he was named multiple times in the files. Even though he's denied that she told him that, she did. Trump and Epstein were friends, of course, in the 90s and the early 2000s. And Trump now says he cut ties with Epstein after Epstein, quote, stole women who worked at Mar-a-Lago. A claim that Trump did not want to talk about anymore today.
Mr. President, what do you think Epstein was stealing those women for?
It's the million-dollar question. And of course, there was no answer. Paula Reed is out front live in Washington. Paula, you've read through the DOJ filing where they're now asking a court to put out the grand jury testimony. What more can you tell us?
The biggest revelation, Erin, from this memo is that even if the government wins on this long shot bid to unseal these transcripts, they don't really amount to very much. This is not going to quell the outcry, the demand for more transparency from the Justice Department, which, as you noted, is the one in possession of most of the outstanding evidence. It was just 10 days ago that the Justice Department made this request to unseal transcripts from grand juries related to Epstein and Maxwell in Florida and New York. Now, it was pretty clear that they were trying to buy some time. Amid this political firestorm, the judge in Florida said no, but the judge in New York said, tell me more. I have some more questions. I need to know more before I weigh in here. That's how we got this memo late last night. And in this memo, the Justice Department told the court, quote, here the passage of time has not dulled the public's interest in these cases. Erin, I think we can nominate that for understatement of the year. But the memo also revealed that the transcripts are really only from these two law enforcement officials. Now, not shocking to people who cover cases like this. You don't put your whole case on in the grand jury. It's a low bar. So you bring in a couple law enforcement officials to summarize your evidence, and then you bring out your victims, in this case, your blockbuster witnesses, at trial, which is what they did for Maxwell. But here in this memo, I mean, they are admitting that even if they win here, this is not going to solve the larger problem they have with these demands for additional material. Now, the victims in this case, they also have about another week to weigh in here on this request. So it's unlikely we're going to get an answer this week, but we could and get some insight into what the judge is thinking late next week.
All right, Paula, thank you very much. And Lulu Garcia-Navarro is with me from the New York Times. Spencer Kuvin, also with us, who represented 9 clients who've made claims against Epstein, including a 14-year-old who reported Epstein and sparked the probe. And Holly Baltz, the Palm Beach Post investigations editor covering the Epstein case. So grateful to all of you. So Spencer, you know, when people want to see, they want to know, right? They want to know what happened. They want to know what other rich and powerful men were involved, and they want to know what all the people around Epstein did and knew, right? That's what people want to know. So in the grand jury testimony, when that comes out, we going to get answers to all those questions?
No, sadly, you're not. You're only going to get partial answers to the questions with respect to the 4 victims that were part of the grand jury testimony. That's it. And even then, you're not going to get the testimony from the victims themselves. We knew during the original investigation that the FBI had interviewed at least 40 potential victims at that time. And then when the fund was opened up after Epstein's death, there were hundreds of victims that applied to the fund. The FBI has this information. The DOJ has the information. Release it. Redact the names of the innocent, redact the names of the victims, but release the rest of the information.
Yeah, and you know, just from what you talk about, Spencer, and also Tara Palmieri, you know, she's done extensive reporting on this. She has said she's aware of at least 1,000 names of victims. 1,000. So you're talking about 4 in the grand jury. I'm just trying to give everyone a sense of the scale. And we don't even know on the other side of the ledger here in terms of the men. Holly, your paper did sue to make grand jury transcripts public in the Palm Beach County case, back in 2006, right, when Epstein had his first legal run-in with pedophilia. You've looked through those documents. There was some survivor testimony in that. You know, that's more than what the DOJ is even asking to make public at this point. Where do you think new information, real new information, exists at this point about Epstein?
Well, you know, I do wonder about the FBI investigation at that time. I know the petition was denied earlier this week to uncover that, I guess, investigative material because it never resulted in an indictment. But it was going to be a 60-count indictment, according to the federal prosecutor who was negotiating the sweetheart deal. And so, you know, it sounds like their investigation was extensive. I just don't know that investigative materials in a criminal grand jury are generally released. And it didn't look to me from that petition with Judge Rosenberg that they were asking for that specifically. But so
Lulu, in this context, I mean, Trump says he wants everything to be shown. You know, he wants everything to be shown. But then he also calls it a hoax. And his White House has made it clear that anything about Trump that's in there, they don't seem to be credible. So it seems pretty clear that they want to control what people see.
That's clear. I think the other thing that's clear is that there is now a consistent message coming out from Trump and his allies, which is, I'm doing everything I can. It's sort of, if you remember before about his tax returns, everyone was saying, give me your tax returns, give me your tax returns. He's like, it's under audit, it's under audit. It was under audit forever.
Right, I have no problem putting it out there. I'm happy to put them out there. They're under audit.
But they're under audit. And this is a similar tactic, which is kind of running out the clock, if you will.
Yeah.
Sort of performative transparency. Look, we're going after this thing. The judges say no. You know, the judges may say yes, but maybe when we get it, it isn't exactly what everyone wants. But as time goes on, maybe people will be less interested. And so I think there is one true thing here, which is they're sitting on a lot of evidence. There are things they could do that don't necessarily need to go through the courts, and they haven't done it. And the question remains, why not?